These aren't just favourites, these are staples in my art practice. Let me show you what I've been using over and over to make abstract art in 2024. Hi there, I'm Janine. I'm an artist and I share my creative journey on this channel. This is a little bit of a different angle today, but I thought this will make it easier to see everything. And it's a little bit more casual because it's the end of the year, probably beginning of the year once you see this. And I'll just show you some of what I've been using the most this year or last year in 2024. To me, it's not that exciting because I've really been using the same supplies over and over again over the years, and now I basically just use the things that I know, that I trust, or that I've been really enjoying over the years. But there's a few new things that I'll get to in a minute. Let's just start with this sketchbook actually. This is the Art Creation by Royal Talons, and a lot of artists use this and rave about them. They are very affordable. They come in different sizes. I really like this small one. What size is this? I'll put it in the comments, everything that I'm showing you today, with links, so you can check them out if you're interested. I also have a larger one of this, but I do really like the small one. I have 3 of these and I like working in them simultaneously. And the paper's fairly thin, but it takes a lot of wet media as well. The paper buckles, but I really don't care about that in my sketchbook. It's not buckling so much that it's a problem for me. And the colour is this kind of creamy colour. You can see compared to the white background, it's quite creamy, but I like that. It's not so harsh. And then actually most of the year I've been using the Daler Rowney System 3 paints, but I have lately, so this is quite a new addition to my art practice, enjoyed the Liquitex soft body paints, just because I really like their consistency and they are very, very pigmented. I'll show you a little bit. These are actually a couple of the colours I've been using the most because that was my kind of colour palette. I've been using a lot of phthalo blue, yellow oxide, which is this one, and a magenta, which I've then switched to the quinacridone crimson, which is almost like a magenta. It's a little bit more red. The nibs do clog up a little bit. Somebody had mentioned that in the comments when I reviewed them, and it is true, they do clog up. Why can't I say that? They do clog up a little bit. Oh, whoa, that was way too much. Let's see if I can get some of that back in. But I don't know if there's a way you can avoid that, the nibs clogging up. I doubt it. If you know a way to avoid that, let me know in the comments, please. I would very much appreciate that. But you can already see this consistency. It's very soft, which is why they're called soft body. And that is the consistency that I like to mix my other paints to as well, by adding a fluid medium, which makes them a little bit more fluid and this kind of consistency. So this is the quinacridone crimson. And then this is the yellow oxide. 2 of the colours that I've been using a lot. Most of the time I use them. I don't use them raw like that though. I mix them with other paints, with other colours to make them a bit more muted. So that's the Liquitex soft body. I can really recommend those. Another thing in terms of paint that I haven't actually talked very much about on this channel, I've sort of been working with it secretly in the background, are these Turner acrylic gouache. I did do a review a while ago, probably a year ago now, of the Holbein Artist Gouache, which are water soluble, and I very much like them, but I like a lot of layering, and that's a bit tricky with gouache. You have to be very careful, and they do re-wet. So I thought I'd go and try some acrylic gouache because they work like gouache, but they don't re-wet. So that means I can layer them. I have quite a few colours of these, but these are the favourite ones. Well, my favourite ones of the ones I've been using. And I only use them in my sketchbooks for quick sketches when I don't want to get my acrylic paint out and make a big mess. I could just get small tubes of acrylic paint. I don't know why I don't do that. I just really like them. Can't quite put my finger on why, but they're less messy than getting my big acrylic paints out. I don't usually use a palette with them. I just squeeze them straight onto the page. So it feels very free. So I'll tell you what these colours are. This is the greyish green. Let's use this tiny brush. I don't usually use tiny brushes like this. And they're just really creamy and opaque. And you can water them down to make them look more like a watercolour. But they're not as vibrant as a watercolour, but I don't mind that because I really like kind of muddy colours or more muted colours. This one is greyish blue. I have a really nice greyish range. I think I've got a brown of those as well that I like, but I couldn't find it. So these are the ones. Greyish blue, very, very nice. So these greyish colours are obviously really up my street. Then this pinky colour, I have quite a few pinky colours. This is the pastel peach. You can see this special pastel range. It's just a very nice peachy colour. And then this one is quite intense, so I often mix it with other colours to tone it down a bit. It's the Venetian red, but I do also like it on its own. Well, it's not that intense. It's just intense for what I usually do. Have these bleed into each other. That'll be nice. Lovely. Really love those colours. And as I said, I only really use them in my sketchbook for quick sketches. And I haven't really mentioned them here before, but maybe I should do some sort of review or more in-depth video on those. Let me know if you're interested in that. Let's stick with colours a bit more. Then you already know, if you've watched anything on my channel, that I love the Caran Neocolor Aquarelle. They're the Neocolor II. The Neocolor ones are the ones that aren't water soluble. Neocolor IIs are water soluble. And I've just picked a couple of the colours that four of the colours that I've been drawn to the most this year. So this one is burnt sienna. I find this is very dark for a burnt sienna, but I very much like it. Then this I've definitely been using a lot, which is English red. This is kind of annoying. I should just rip it off. But now's not the time. So this is actually very similar to this Venetian red. And then I've got the moss green, which I actually prefer when it's not watered down. You'll see in a minute, because this looks nice and muted, but once I add water, it looks a lot brighter. I don't like the colour as much as like that. And then the last colour here is raw umber. I do like raw umber in general as a colour. It's very good for just mixing in with brighter colours, toning them down a little bit. So it's quite a green colour as well. It's usually got a greenish tint or definitely a cool tint. So that's the Neocolor IIs. One medium that I always gravitate towards, you'll have seen me use this a lot. I very much like working in layers, and especially in transparent layers. So that's where the glazing liquid comes in really handy. Sometimes I just use water. You're not supposed to use too much water with your acrylics or it won't bind to the canvas. Sometimes I just use another fluid medium. The thing about the glazing liquid is that it's got a little bit of retarder in it. So it'll make the paint dry a little bit slower. So you've got more working time to spread the paint evenly and not have loads of streaks. It does clog up quite a lot, which is a bit annoying, but most of these dispensers do. I'll just show you. You can either mix it on your palette or you can just mix it straight on your painting. I often just mix it straight on my painting, and then you just mix it with your paint and get a really nice transparent layer. You notice how that kind of makes it a little bit pastel-like? It looks a bit whitish, chalky, because the medium is white, but once it's dry, it'll dry clear. So this will just dry as a thin layer of this color, and not have this chalkiness to it. Let's go over some of this here. See how that makes a really nice transparent glaze. It's really nice over this actually. So if you do a lot of glazing, I can definitely recommend that, but you could just use another liquid medium instead. It just will dry faster than the glazing liquid. I love these Princeton Catalyst blades. So these are, I think, the mini blades. They come in different shapes. I've also got this kind of shape. They come in lots of different shapes. And they're basically a palette knife that is silicone, so it's a little bit more bendy. And the paint peels right off, which is really satisfying. Once a bit of paint has built up on here, I like to just peel that off. And these are the Catalyst wedges, which again come in different shapes. So some of them have little cutouts, so they're a bit like a comb texture once you apply them. I just like them to smear paint around with. This is maybe not enough space. So you already saw me use this one earlier. Let's get another colour here, just because it's right there. So it's great for just taking out paint out of pots. That's one thing I use them for a lot. And then you can create loads of different textures with them. I just really like scraping paint on like this, which creates kind of a thin layer, but also makes a little bit of texture, this kind of ridge texture. Sometimes I like the ridge textures, sometimes I don't. And if I don't, I'll just use a brush and mix it. But I really like the feeling of these, the kind of softness. And then the big one kind of does the same thing. You could just get a credit card or a rigid piece of card to basically do the same thing. What I like about these is that it just sits in your hand really nicely, and it's a really nice feeling, which is why I enjoy using that. I don't use credit cards or things like that, expired credit cards or gift vouchers, but this just feels really nice, so I really enjoy using that. And you can see that basically does the same, it just makes a nice large surface.
If you like this video, consider subscribing.
And once you get less paint on, you create these textured effects. So I really love those. And then for brushes, the ones I've been reaching for the most that are maybe a little bit more unusual are, first of all, this makeup brush. I bought this in Poundland, which means it was really cheap, and you can use expensive makeup brushes if you want. But I also haven't had any problems with the bristles coming out, which is often the case with cheap brushes. But even if they do, I don't really mind for my kind of work. So I would just wet that a little bit and then dry it off so it's not so full of water. And then one thing it's really nice for is making thin washes like this. I'm just picking up some of this paint here. Or if you use a bit more paint, you can create, or not. You see how it's just little dots here? You can make little dots or kind of streaky effects. It's just, again, because it's so soft, feels really nice to apply the paint with. You get these really soft cloud-like effects. This one is a calligraphy brush, and again, this one's very soft, so it feels really nice to work with. I use this one a lot on larger paintings. It's basically a large version of a round brush, and you can just, it's very bendy because the bristles are quite long, so you can get a lot of very nice uncontrolled marks, which is what I like about this one. Then this one, there's a very specific use for this. I use this brush a lot, probably more than any other brush. It's a really basic, very cheap actually, flat brush. This one's probably a bit small for large paintings, my large canvases that are like a meter size. But I really like it because it doesn't take a lot of paint because it's so thin, which means, again, it's very good for glazing. It just holds a small amount of paint, and then you can really easily, the paint soaks into the paper here, so it's not that easy to show you here. But on a canvas or a wood panel that's already got acrylic on it, it's very good for just moving the paint around a large area, so you end up with a really thin layer, which means it's more transparent. And I also really like it for dry brushing. When you've only got a little bit of paint left on your brush, and you kind of do this, which gives you a textured, transparent layer. So I really like it for that as well, because it only takes so little paint. And same with this bristle brush. I really love using this one for dry brushing. And as I just mentioned, for dry brushing, you just take very little paint. Actually, there's a little bit on here. I'll take that. And you don't apply a lot of pressure, or depending on how much paint there is on your brush. If there's very, very little brush, you can apply more pressure. And you just scratch over the surface and it'll give you a really nice textured, but kind of transparent layer. And that's basically also been my favorite technique this year that I've noticed that I hadn't really used that much before, is dry brushing. Just doing this. It feels very satisfying. To me, at least. You might hate it, but give it a try. And that concludes all the supplies that I've been loving last year, 2024. I would love to know what supplies you've been using the most this year, or which ones you've been loving but haven't used that much. Let me know in the comments below. If you want to see some more inspiration on supplies, then click the link to the video I've linked in the description box. I wish you all a happy new year and hope it's going to be a great one for you. Thanks and bye bye.